So I'm going to start. There we go, recording in progress. So feel free to pause me while we're chatting today and ask questions. If we have questions at the end, I'm happy to stay on as long as we need. Both Maddie and I can tackle some of those, and Brandon may tackle some as well, because he is currently one of our artists in residence. And so, all right, let's get started. We're going to talk about two different calls for artists tonight: the Heartside History Murals, and then the Artist in Residence program that we have here at Dwelling Place. I want to note that both of those programs receive funding from a variety of different funding streams. A little bit of funding is coming in from the Downtown Grand Rapids Incorporated. There's funding from MCACA, so Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs, and some support through NeighborWorks America. So 3 different funding streams that impact those programs, which means that for some of our programs and activities, we have to give credit to those supporting donors and sponsors. So just want to give them a shout out as we get started tonight. I think that, just as an overview, there are 2 different programs that we're going to talk about. I think that this equates to about 5 artist opportunities, depending on how we count and what we're looking at. The artists are selected by a community committee and some staff members. We have a couple of artists who received funding for the Heartside Historic Murals last year, who are helping to inform that process this year. And Brandon's also sitting on that committee, and they sit on that committee until we make the decision-making process. And then we add more residents from the Heartside neighborhood to make that decision-making process, so that they can choose artists that they think will represent their neighborhood and the vision and the stories that they want to tell. And so those aren't always residents from their neighborhood, but they definitely, we want them to have a say in that process. And so we have a steering committee that has joined us for 3 or 4 different steering committee meetings, and then they'll be a part of the selection process as we move forward. What we're hoping for, a little bit of difference between the 2 activities, but this is just sort of where they come together. So our programming, this program is actually run through the Dwelling Place Community Building and Engagement Department. And the things that we're hoping to do with these community-based arts programs are to build a greater sense of community. Literally, it's in the name of our department, right? We want to increase the awareness of neighborhood history and the experiences and the social justice issues specifically faced by neighbors and residents. We want to build connections between residents and the creative culture of their neighborhood or their community. In some cases, it's building that connection also with community residents that they might not have access to otherwise. And also we want to strengthen and celebrate, the neighborhood and community identity. Both of these projects are rooted in the Heartside neighborhood, which, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is the portion of the downtown that is between Fulton and Wealthy Street, and then Lafayette and the river. And it's a very interesting neighborhood, very high rental rates. We have 98% of our residents are renters, and the other 2% are very wealthy condo owners. And so we have the average income in Heartside is $23,000. Our condos start at $300,000. So you kind of see the disparity there is pretty dramatic. And we have a number of residents living in the Heartside neighborhood who previously lived in shelter or qualify for housing because they have some sort of physical or a mental disability. And so we really want to celebrate the history and identity of this neighborhood as a core Grand Rapids City neighborhood, but also the stories of the residents and the community members who have found this place to be home over time. And so also residents, getting connected to one another, to artists, championing the work of artists, and that going both ways. Artists championing kind of the experience of residents. So we're going to talk first about the Heartside Historic Mural Project. Dwelling Place has a long history going in the Heartside neighborhood of creating large-scale murals and funding large-scale murals. As we kind of look at the upper left-hand corner here, that's one of the first large-scale murals we did in the neighborhood. It's right at the corner of Cherry and South Division, kind of focuses on the history, the furniture history of City of Grand Rapids. And then the other murals we're going to see today on the slides are ones from last year's Heartside Historic Mural Project. I'm going to give you a little brief overview of these just so that you can get a sense of the themes. So Ijana Cortez's mural down here in the bottom right features 3 Black activists who started the Grand Rapids Black People's Free Store, which was a project in the late 1960s serving the neighborhood area of like Heartside in the neighborhood just south of Heartside. And there were 5 men who started the project, and all of them went on to do really amazing advocacy work, both in Grand Rapids and across the state of Michigan. The mural that's in the lower left-hand corner over there is going to be by Jasmine Bruce. It celebrates the history of the Union Depot, which was located right along Ione Street, and celebrates the fact that it was a place, it was a lot of the entry point for a lot of immigrants coming in and out of the Grand Rapids area, and the histories of those people and some really specific stories that she found in the historic documents at the Grand Rapids Public Library. The next 3 slides here include 3 additional murals that were created last summer and some of the artists that created them as well. We see Dustin Hunt here in front of a mural that celebrates Dr. Ella Mary Sims. She was a Grand Rapids advocate in so many different areas. It's hard to even count, but most notably education, housing, and women's access to healthcare. Dr. Sims was nominated as a giant among giants, and there's some really beautiful kind of history of her life included in her mural created by Dustin. In the lower hand corner here, right on the corner of South Division and Wealthy Street, is a mural created by Edwin Anderson, celebrating the history of some of the bars and restaurants and entertainment venues in the Heartside neighborhood that catered to Black clientele and performers over the years, even when neighborhoods were highly segregated. And I mean, I don't know that that's not untrue today, but still providing a place for people to connect and celebrate and enjoy themselves. And then also we have a mural that's at the corner of South Division and Weston Streets that celebrates the history of the LGBTQ community struggle to get recognition around the AIDS epidemic and the impact that the AIDS Resource Center had on that struggle. And the AIDS Resource Center was actually located in that building that that mural is located on. So those are some examples of the murals that were created last year, just to give a sense of what kind of was produced in 2001. So we'll be selecting up to 5 local artists. I think that we've actually scaled this back to 4, and I haven't updated the slide yet because our steering committee wanted to make sure that the pay for each of the mural sites was a little bit more up to par with the size, the potential, I'm going to say potential size of the mural sites. We're going to look at that in just a second. I'll describe that a little bit more. But just when we're talking about the historic murals, we're going to cover locations, some of the call for artist details that you want to pay attention to. And then Maddie, I'm going to ask actually that you pull up the list of themes and then be ready to drop that in the chat so people can kind of look at it if they want to peruse through. Any questions so far? I can talk real fast, and I do that so that we can get through and get to questions. So if you need me to slow down or if you have a question, please feel free to interrupt. Okay, 2022. These are our 4 sites. We have 1 backup site. So I'm gonna be real honest. We have 2 sites here that are not owned by Dwelling Place, and those are the 2 that are on the top here. The 2 on the bottom are owned by Dwelling Place, and that means that we have the ability to approve those murals with a different process. One of these is on a church. So they're going to have a different type of process to get that approved. One of them's in a corporate restaurant. So they might have a different process of approving the murals. We have another site owned by Doing Place. It's a fairly sizable wall. And if we ran into complications with our designs and getting them approved, we have that reserving that as a backup, just in case we need to move to another site. Want to be transparent about that, because I would hate to see someone put in a lot of work into a design and then get to the point where maybe we can't get the approval the way that we want to make options. So there, we see these walls and it's like, oh, what a big, beautiful wall. I want to fill that right up with a mural. Gonna tell you, like, the amount of funding that we have available doesn't really make it possible for us to pay a fair wage for you to be able to cover the whole wall in all the paint. So what we're really looking at is for some of these walls to consider what it would be like to, cover a sizable portion of it, or a portion of it, and create a free floating piece that would fit the amount of money that we have allocated. It would be fair to you as an artist, but would also feel satisfactory in the space. Interpret as you will, right? And so there is a bit of funding that we have set aside to help with some of the base coats for some of these walls. And last year we did, to the best of our ability, help do some base coat painting on the walls to get them primed for the artist. So we did some pre-cleaning with volunteers whenever possible. We did some base coats whenever possible. I think out of the 5 sites we did last year, we were able to base coat and clean 4 of them for the artist. And when we did the base coat on several of them, that meant that we rolled color directly onto the wall. Some of the artists didn't want rolled color because they wanted to have a base coat that was white. And so we base coated white for them. So I'm going to describe each of these sites in a little bit more detail, and then you can drive by and check them out, or Google Earth them and look at them. These pictures are from Google Earth. All right. So 250 Commerce is the outside of Bethlehem Lutheran Church. It is this, can you see my cursor when I put my cursor over here or not? Yeah, okay. So it's this wall here. Now, one of the things I want to know is that we believe that we're going to be able to get access to this parking lot here to either put a lift in or put scaffold in, but not the upper wall, the upper parking lot here. So when you're looking at this wall, it goes all the way back and it's super beautiful and it's all that space. But we actually think that probably, to be on the safe side, you should be thinking about the space that's in here, right? And then on a historic building like this, even though this person didn't observe this, this rule, you're actually not allowed to paint that brick that's not previously painted. So you really can only paint this lovely beige stuff here, okay? So that would be kind of the area for this mural. Again, that's on a Bethlehem Lutheran Church. They have a community committee, I think, that would be reviewing the design as well. And we're working out details with their pastor currently. All right, so now we're going to look at this one. This one, hopefully, this is a big, awesome wall that we all look at and think, ooh, that wall needs a mural. This is outside of Rockwell Republic. Tricky things about this site, that parking lot has quite a slope. For those of you who have worked in a lift before, I'm predicting, haven't gone out there, I'm predicting it's more than a 6% incline. So it's going to be really hard to use a lift there. We might have to look at a bucket truck or some other form, scaffolding maybe. And they have expressed that they would want scaffolding that could be collapsed and moved at the end of the day. But lots of interesting opportunities there. Again, the amount that we have to put towards that wall really doesn't cover the cost of doing the entire wall. I would be very interested in working with somebody who is interested in phasing something out over the course of a couple of years. And so if you were selected for this wall, that might be something that we should consider.
Jen, can
Lower walls? Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
You can get lifts that have like hydraulic levelers. So they basically have these like like these things that come down, so you can level your lift off, so you could still paint, like on that grade.
Yeah, we talked to the lift company last year about the hydraulic leveler, and even with some of the hydraulic levelers, depending on the slope, you still often need to do some additional leveling to get it to the point where it will do it on quite an extreme slope. And part of that is, but we haven't had the lift company come out and do a site check yet, so we're gonna get rolling on that in the next couple of weeks and have them let us know what's possible. All right. On the lower side here, this is 106 South Division. This wall has had a mural in the past. We actually gave it a base coat last year and then ended up moving this mural to the corner of South Division and Weston because it made sense. That was the building that had the AIDS Resource Center. And so we wanted to, put the mural on the building where the thing had been. And so the wall's been primed. It's kind of ready to go. Technically, this whole wall is a previously painted surface because we're in a historic district. You can only paint on a previously painted surface. But right now we're only expecting to cover this white portion down here at the bottom. The thing to know about this wall is that there's often a gate that goes all the way across this parking lot. Can't see it in the picture because the gate's up in the photo, but there's usually a gate that kind of goes in front of it. And so you can see it really well from a car and a vehicle as you're driving down the street. You can see it well as a pedestrian. There's definitely some visual interference with that gate being in the way. So it's worth a drive by to check that one out. And then 101 Sheldon. This is a cool wall. This again is another wall that had a very large scale mural on it for about a decade. When the wall repair got so bad that this is kind of what Doyne Place does. We keep a mural up until the wall repair is really kind of drastic, and then we will patch the wall and paint over the mural if it's been there for a number of years. And that had been the case here. And so patched and repainted the wall about 2 years ago now. Again, this is a ginormous wall for the amount of money that we've set aside for it. I would think that the approach to this could be that you're doing a portion of the wall, not the whole thing. And I do want to note that if you look back here in the back corner, this is like a heating and cooling unit that is here, and there's a big gated area around it. You can get a ladder in there. There's a lot of utility pipes back there, and it's not a place where you're going to be able to get a lift in there safely and then extend your lift up over the side here. And so I would prefer that people are thinking about something that's maybe on the front corner of this building, the front quarter, sorry, of this building, or, along a portion of it, but not the entirety of the wall, just because I think it's going to be more hassle than it's worth. And frankly, we don't have the funds to do it justice. So that one's already base coated white in that area. The paint is pretty fresh on that. We would probably give it a good wash, and if we need to do another base coat of another color, we would, for whatever the area, the square footage of the mural is. Those are the 4 sites that we're considering right now. Any questions about those sites? Some good walls. All right. Oh, and I will say that we certainly have had people in the past who have done additional fundraising to help cover costs if they wanted to go bigger. If that was something you're interested in exploring, I'm happy to talk to you about that. In some cases where we got like a paint donation or something like that, we're able to extend a tax receipt for the donor, so that they could use that, because we are a tax exempt organization and a charitable organization. However, if you're pursuing donor dollars, sometimes there's a conflict with donors that we already get donations from. And so that definitely needs to be a conversation if you would be naming Doyne Place as part of that process, just to let you know. Application details. So hopefully did everybody receive that application in an email or as an attachment? If you didn't, throw your email into the chat, and Maddie will email both of those over to you right away so that you can check it out. So the call for artists for the Heartside Mural project, you gotta get back to us, the completed application, 1 to 3 paragraphs that describe past artistic activities that highlighted your ability to incorporate community themes and vision in your planning process and final artworks. And I'm going to talk about that process for just a second, so that everybody kind of understands what you're getting into. And I'll do that before we move on. But the artist team and bio. So if you've got a couple of people on your team, make sure you just kind of give us everybody's bio or resume. A resume is fine as well. And then examples, really, I'll tell you very honestly, we're going to only probably include 5 or 6 of your images on the slideshow, because we usually have a pretty decent number of people who submit for projects like this. And so give me your 5 or 6 great images. You know, don't give me a bunch of like, oh, and here's another thing that I drew and another thing that I drew. Give me the ones that you think, if these are the only ones that the committee saw, this is my best shit, right? And you can send those as JPEGs. You can just attach them to the email. Some people have given me access to a Dropbox folder, but it's easier if you attach them to the email and even just send 2 emails with a couple of different attachments. So the Heartside Historic Mural process is a little different maybe than other application processes you've gone through. We don't ask for even a draft design at the beginning. What we're looking for is an artist that we think would work well with the community and would be willing to dig into some of the themes that our community has put together as potential concepts. And so Maddie's going to throw a link into the chat. I want to note that this is a work in progress. And so we are reaching out to community members to add new ideas into our themes list. But we are really trying to tell some of the stories of community members that might not have been amplified in the past, told in the past, or intentionally omitted. And so we are trying to dig into stories that people, spark their imaginations about the, past, current, and future state of the neighborhood, and really be fairly place-based. So we're trying to find people who have roots here, stories that have roots here, or businesses or organizations that have made an impact in this neighborhood. And I think that this list will expand over the next couple of weeks. But Maddie, will you maybe read off 1 or 2 theme ideas that are on that list currently?
Yeah, so in the chat, the first link that's listed there is our list of themes. Currently on there, we have some different elements of Black history in Grand Rapids, including like our entertainment district, segregation civil rights suit that was carried out in the area, some of the civil rights protests that went on, and then we also have LGBTQ history ideas. We are looking sort of at like maybe the dance scene, our history with Pride, where we have Native American history on the list as well, thinking kind of about like murals that maybe give credit to the whose land that we're on. We have Heartside's influential women, of which there are many, but we're looking.
We've had a lot of really great participation from the Women's History Council members who have been able to identify a number of women who've had an impact in the neighborhood. And there's some other interesting kind of history that's related to women that's associated with Heartside as well.
Yep. Also on our list is Asian American history. We have immigration and migration, which is, I believe, definitely a new one on the list from last year. We have food, culture, and entertainment, and this is sort of just a broader celebration of Heartside that's not as closely tied to a certain people group. And then as the list goes on, it's a lot of miscellaneous things that you can page through.
So our process kind of works like this. You all submit your applications. Maddie and I are going to put them into a really lovely PowerPoint for our committee. We're going to go through and they're going to get your application documents ahead of time and have time to read them over and look at them. Then we get together for a committee meeting and we go through and we look at all of your images. They have access to that PowerPoint before and after. And then they're able to select a number of artists that they think would be great for the project. From there, we reach out to you and say, hey, we think you'd be really great for this wall. What do you think? This is what we're thinking. And you said, if you say, yeah, I'm interested in that, then we sit down with the list of themes and the artists, and you kind of go through it, think about what you're interested in, and we bring together a meeting with a group of local historians and history geeks, and we talk about which themes you want to dig into more, and they give you ideas about where you can find more research. And often that results in them saying, yeah, come to the archive. I'll pull what we have, you can come check it out. Or come to the Grand Rapids African American Museum and Archive. Let's chat about it, and I'll pull out what photos I have. And so it's a great time to connect and then kind of research that theme more deeply. Sometimes there's a lot of information and sometimes there's not. But we really are trying to get to the root of how do you create artworks that really reflect that history and that are a really great melding of the artist's style and also the place. And so I think Jasmine's piece does that in a really interesting way because she actually pulls some of her pieces directly from some historic photos and postcards. And then she also really used her style and her color choices to make it sort of feel like a memory. I think Kim did that in a really unique way with the mural that's at the corner of Weston and South Division, because hers also included references of historic photos as well as sort of the LGBTQ flag and how it changed over time to signify the change in time, right? That this is an ongoing issue. It doesn't just exist in history, it exists today as well. And so there is this, that kind of narrative can be woven, I think, more completely when you actually have the historic resources to work from. And I think it's a really important part of this process that we hope artists honor. Because of that, there's a $400 stipend for each site to go through the drafting process, because we want you to meet with the historians, do some research, draft your design, and then we have a community Zoom call where residents and community members can hop on and give you feedback about your design. And I would never suggest to an artist that you design by committee, but I do think it's important to hear from the community about what you've created and how you've represented people so that you can get feedback about how they're interpreting your work before we go to the final design. At that point, if you heard feedback that made you think this project is not for me, this is not my bag, I don't like where this is headed, or I don't think I can fit the vision of the neighborhood, then you have the ability to step back from the project and still get paid the $400 stipend for the design work that you have done at that point, right? And that would go the same for if we choose a mural and we're moving along and the community loves it and the artist loves it, and the business or the organization whose wall it's going to go on just doesn't love it. A, we have our fallback wall to use, or B, that might be the other time where we could say, okay, this isn't working, maybe this isn't the year, let's try it again next year or whatever, right? So we want to pay you for your time because we know that takes time, and it's important to not to recognize the impact that you're making. All right, I'm gonna move into the artist in residence so that y'all can hear about that as well, and then we'll we'll get through that fairly quickly, and then we'll pause for all the questions. Sound good? Any pressing questions before we move on?
I'll just make a note that both calls are also in the Zoom chat if you guys want to follow along with those.
Great, thank you, Maddie. Yeah, check those out while we're chatting if you have the ability to do it, because if you have any questions, I would love to make sure that you feel really confident in what you're putting together for these. So artists in residence, we actually had the opportunity to host 3 local artists in residence this season or this year, and we will have several on for the summer season. So Brandon is here. Brandon, I'm going to pick on you for a half a second and ask you to talk about your artist in residence experience. If you would give us like a minute or two of your thoughts and reflections about what have you done as the artist in residence, like what has the experience been like, and share a little bit about that. That would be great.
So I started in January, and my vision originally was to do a I Don't Know What You Know, which is this event I was doing post-COVID as a community building experiment with Dwelling Place, and then hosting 3 art workshops leading up to that event. Before like all of that work happened, I took a class with NeighborWorks. Lights cut off. I took a class with NeighborWorks, and that was through the Artist in Residence program, and actually took 2 classes. The first class was about using art to kind of facilitate affordable housing. And the second class was about how to sort of put together like measurable points or measurable information for engagement, and how to basically make what the work that you're doing count towards something. And so I took those 2 classes with NeighborWorks, and took that information and added it to the vision of putting this event together. And I hosted 3 art workshops, watercolor painting, did acrylic painting, and then collage making. And then we're using the art created in those workshops for a larger mural that's going to be the backdrop of this event that we're doing. And those large murals are going to reside in the resident spaces that I was working in. So that was like Herkimer Apartments, Ferguson, and Burnberry Place. And all of those apartment spaces were people that were recently or had been homeless. And we use those events to kind of engage those residents. And then the large event is talking about access. So access to fresh foods and vegetables, access to information, access to healthcare, and access to housing.
Great. Then Brandon spends like what, like maybe 3 hours a week with our staff team, being involved in team meetings and with all Dwelling Place staff, so that you can get a sense of what's happening within the organization and within the neighborhood. You get better connected to some of the resources that we have as an organization and as a department as well. And so when he hosts like the workshops, there's like 1 or 2 other staff that come along for the ride just to kind of help out, lend a hand, and be a part of the mix. And you know, we helped do outreach. So we went door knocking last week and handed out flyers to the I Don't Know What You Know event to residents in the neighborhood to help spread the word. And so the artist in residence sort of becomes a part of our community building engagement team. And our team ranges in size from anywhere from 5 core team members with 1 or 2 AmeriCorps. This summer we'll have 3 AmeriCorps, and then we also usually have a couple of interns floating around. And we usually have 2 or 3 interns who are part of the mix. So our team, Maddie's spending time with us right now as well. So it's a little bit of a fluid group, but you get to know everybody, and they're really great about giving feedback about what they think will work, what could be improved, and how we can engage the neighborhood better. So We're definitely recovering from COVID in a lot of ways, because the relationships we've had with residents in the past aren't as strong, and we're really excited about doing more engagement activities out in the community to get people more connected and more engaged. So the artist in residency, there's a photo here of the space that Brandon's using right now. The space that will be eligible for use for the next artist in residency is going to be about half that size. It's right next door to where Brandon's located at. You're going to be sharing a portion of that space with a little bit of storage. We've got a stage that has to live in that space as well, but you'll have about 500 square feet. But you also have access to the rest of the building that we have access to if you decided to use it. So there's meeting space. We have like a media lab where you can have, a hybrid meeting if you really want to. Not that most people don't do that off their laptops, but it is available. And there's room to meet with people if you were working on a project and you wanted to do some additional activities. We do have a small music room that's also in the building as well, so that you wanted to do some practice space stuff. Although I think, Brandon, you just practice in your space, right?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually because the residents in 106 could hear in the music room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit quieter in the basement in the studio spaces.
Yeah.
And so this one comes with a $3,360 artist honorarium and $1,000 budget towards supplies. The thing about that budget for supplies is that has to be stuff that we can purchase. So, like I just picked up that signboard today for the mural that Brandon's gonna be working on. That's going to be a part of the, I don't know what event. So it's got to be kind of hard stuff that we can go out and buy for you, that we can put together. We can get a table, we can get a chalkboard or whatever, but it's got to be something that's sort of physical. And then those supplies live with us afterwards. If you said, oh, my $1,000 needs to be spent on, brushes and canvas, that's great. The brushes need to live with us when you leave, right? But the canvas, if you make a painting, you can take the canvas with you. But the brushes would live with us at that point. Okay. So kind of a differentiation there. What you use, what you don't use lives with us into the future. So, and same thing would go for any like large scale furniture or something like that. So the other portions of this are really that you get the support of the, the community building engagement department, along with our promotional and marketing support, which I have to say is just okay in this type of space. Our usual audience of people who are really passionate about affordable housing, they're not always the art super fans that I wish them to be. We're working on that. And so, we can definitely help amplify design, put stuff out there, reshare. We don't tweet, but we definitely Instagram. We will repost and share your content to our audiences as well, and then put it into our newsletter, which goes out to about 3,000 people. And then we have this really big, beautiful space here at 106 South Division. If you haven't seen the gallery space here, used to be used by Calvin College. Pretty nice gallery. We've got several movable white walls. Over the last couple of years, we've only been able to have window exhibitions, but I'm really excited because we're going to be able to host a regular ass opening in the future, very near future. So we're kicking that off again. And so you could have if you are a fine artist who wants to have your own exhibition, you can have an exhibition. You can do what Brandon's doing and creating an experience. One of the other artists in residence who starts in a month. So we're doing 3 of these throughout the year. The other one is Josh Dunnigan. He's not going to be using studio space, but he's going to be working on a community drum project. And so he's going to be doing drumming out and around the neighborhood with residents and neighbors to get them involved in, learning some basic beat patterns and then creating their own drum group that will perform at community activities. So that leads me to kind of the application details. The first time we did this application, we didn't ask for this part here, the paragraph that describes your proposed project. And I will say that one of the benefits that Brandon's application had when he proposed was that he kind of described what his project was. Josh described what his project would be. We didn't require that before, but the committee members recognized that that was a big part of their decision-making process, that these were artists who really kind of dug into like, what would they do? And just like the Heartside Historic Mural process, we are really committed to and excited about connecting the artist who's part of the artist residency into the neighborhood and to the resources that are here and to residents whenever possible. And so we have this big old checklist that we try and get through of, stuff we want to share with you. There's a lot of cool history resources and documents we have. We want to connect you to different neighborhood leaders. We want to connect you so that you can go on a tour of Mel Trotter and Degage and really understand the experience of residents living in the neighborhood who may have stayed in shelter previously and then moved into housing. We have several, if there's a social justice issue, we probably either have a community group, organization, group of residents who are passionate about that thing in the neighborhood. And so I think Brandon's ideas have evolved over time, getting to know residents and talking to different community members. And I would hope that anyone who comes in with a preconceived notion of what they think they're going to do, that will evolve. But if you could give the committee just a brief description of what you think you might be interested in, that would be really helpful. And then similar examples to what we asked for in the first call for artists, which are, give us a couple of just paragraphs about, what you've done in the past. Tell us what you'd like to do if you were selected. Again, I will say we do ask for 5 to 10 examples of images, but we're only going to probably use 6 of them. So give us your best 6 if you really want to be discerning and know what we're going to edit out. Just give me 6 really great ones. And the due dates on both of the call for artists are the same. So it's May 10th. So a little bit about the timeline, right? So submissions by local artists, April, all the way into the, May 10th. I expect to have a bunch of people sending me stuff on May 8th and 9th. I get it, that's fine. But we do have a committee meeting. Maddie, we have a committee meeting, and Maddie and I need a couple of days to put together the PowerPoint so that the committee can see all of your great submissions and they can make a educated and informed decision based off of what you've submitted. So we try and do that turnaround as quick as possible to get the information to them. They have a discussion about what they're excited about, what they're hesitant about, and then they vote. And then we use that to select the artists that will participate in those roles. June, the new artist in residency position starts, so it's a very quick turnaround. And there are some time requirements in the artist residency that you want to be aware of. And part of that is, spending time with the community building engagement team once or twice a week. Brandon, I think, technically you're physically in the space twice a week when you can make it. And then you attend like a digital meeting on Friday just to kind of keep up with what's happening in the organization. I would recommend to people that you try to be physically present when staff are here 4 to 8 hours a week, just because you're going to get more, you're going to get more support. They're going to understand what you're doing. And a lot of that can just be you're in the space working in the studio space, but that you would sit in on 1 or 2 of the staff meetings. So we have 2 staff team meetings right now, weekly on Mondays and Wednesdays. If you could make it to one of those, that would be ideal. And because that's also where we coordinate and figure out who can help support whatever project you are working on. Then in July and August, for those of you who are interested in the Heartside Historic Mural process, we would be drafting ideas. So in early May, there's a selection of artists. In June, you'd be meeting with the historians. Sorry, I should have left that on the list here. So you'd be meeting with the local historians and resources. You working on your drafts and your ideas and getting feedback from the community in June. And then we would go in front of the Public Art Committee for the City of Grand Rapids in July. You'd be painting in August, September. this is not a thing. That just goes away there. In in August, what Maddie and I are hoping for is that we will get everyone painting within the same 2-week period or even the same week period, which would be awesome. And we are really hoping that that will happen in August. The last couple of years, August has been real hot. So we're kind of trying to go for that dry time, but also we recognize how warm it can be. So our hope is that murals are done by the beginning of September. And then another portion of the Heartside Historic mural process is that we have a local historian who then does tours through the neighborhood, leading people around, telling them about the history pieces that are encapsulated in the tours. The mural, my brain is melting. That are included in the murals, and then she does a great job. But we would be doing that in like September, October. Sound good? Those are the that's the process. That's the end of my scripted talking. It was a lot. I've been doing this for many hours at this point today. Who has questions? I'm going to stop sharing that so I can see all his beautiful faces.
Are the list of themes ones just for the murals, or are they for the artists in residence too that you suggest we follow?
Those are just for the murals, and that would be where I think the two projects really deviate. The Heartside Historic Mural project is really based off of history. It's lovely when it can be tied to the present, but it's not necessarily tied to the present. However, the artist in residence really is about digging into and understanding the experience of people living in the now, and specifically the lives and experience of residents living in the Heartside neighborhood today. So we do that by directly connecting you to residents and to the social service organizations that might be touching on a topic or a theme that you're particularly passionate about. So for instance, if you are particularly passionate about women's issues, and that kind of came out in your first couple of days in your artist residency, I would connect you with the shelter that is in the Heartside neighborhood that specifically supports women. I would connect you to the YWCA. I would connect you to some of the, depending on if you're interested in women's health, we would probably dig into some of the healthcare resources in the neighborhood that are specific to women. So then we would talk to, so if there's something, I'm just using that as a low hanging fruit example, but if there's something that you were specifically interested in digging into, we would dig into that. And then we would also find residents who are passionate about similar issues and connect you to them as well.
That makes sense, thanks.
Yep. And I would say that even what we might call history in our history list is, are also things that have, living people who live in the neighborhood today who are like, I was having a great chat with a resident who's like, oh man, I love that piece about the horseshoe grill. Like I have so many great memories of that. That's where my friends and I used to go to get down. She tells a much better story than I do, but she definitely has some fond memories. And so it's fun. We had a lot of people who came out for the dedication of Dr. Ella Mary Sims mural because they know her, and they, so many people call her Aunt Ella and knew her and have relationships with her kids and her grandkids. And so there are a lot of residents who would come and be like, oh yeah, I knew her, and we'll hang out and talk to the artist and kind of share their stories about the impact she had on their lives. So, history is not that far past. It's also kind of living in the present too. See, Tegan asked one question. I had like a 5-minute answer.
Love it, thanks.
Yep. I think another thing I want to add is that I think Maddie and I both have a passion around trying to make sure the artists who are participating in the mural project this summer and the artists in residence that, you make some connections that are beneficial to you, that there's a sense of community around the work that you're doing. I was really sad last year because, COVID. So we had one dinner together as the artists who were working on the mural project, got to connect, got to chat about the projects, but we really didn't feel that safe bringing lots of people together to, have communal meals and things like that. I don't think there would be a ton of that, but I would love to bring people together a few times over the course of the painting period so that people can get to know each other and really connect. In a community the size of Grand Rapids, sometimes we already know people, but we haven't had a chance to really sit down and get to know each other or meet other residents in the neighborhood. One of my favorite parts of that meal last year was that a couple of residents came and one or two of them brought their kids, and their kids were able to meet the artists who were going to be painting the murals, and then they'd stop by and say hi and check it out as the work progressed. And that sense of community and connection, I think, is important when you're on a wall all day painting and it's super hot and it feels a little punishing. And so we want to make it feel, like the community is supporting you and connected to you. And I think the way we do that is by actually connecting one to one another. So.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. I'm Elia. Question. I was a part of the 49507 project that happened last year. I did a mural on the corner of Thomas and Eastern in the Franklin and Eastern area, which was so fun. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. And they gave us a timeline, and it was about the same time frame as your project, but I was okay, but a couple artists struggled with weather. Yep. And so my question is, are you guys able to like extend days if the weather, it wasn't so much cold, it was more or less raining on quite a bit of those days. So are you guys taking that into consideration at all?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's great about having the majority of the artists be local is that we can be a little flexible with paint dates and things like that. The thing that would be a limitation or something that we want to consider is, if we're using a lift or something like that, we want to try and get it done. Obviously, rain is what rain is. Rain does not allow us to paint on walls. And so I think last year we kind of did it over a 2-week span for the most part. And so that would be something that we would be kind of negotiating with everybody as the artists are selected, because we also know that artists might have other obligations. So we're going to try and work with you the best that we can. Our goal is to settle on a couple of weeks that really work for everyone and tighten it up as much as we can within reason. But, flexibility is key to getting it done sometimes.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
And not to pick on Edwin, but he already knows he's a slow painter. He took like 4 or 5 weeks to work on his piece. If you know him, he would not be offended by me saying that. He's just a slow mover, real chatty. So he'd get up on that, he'd get up on that lift or up on that scaffold, and a resident would wander by and he'd start chatting. And so his timeline was a little bit longer than everybody else's. And, he probably got a lot more out of the relationship building than everybody else did as well. But, we're willing to work with you if that's what it takes to get a beautiful piece of artwork created,
Yeah, got it. Thanks so much.
Yep. Other questions, y'all?
Yeah, I actually had a question. So I noticed you say earlier that like the space that was available was like around 500 square feet for the other one available. And so but there was also like the meeting space and such. And I was wondering, for more like events trying to bring in community and such like that, what is the actual like capacity of the space, like to where like you could have people in to try to like do things like for, I guess just like what is the general size of that space?
Well, I'm delighted because we have really not been able to have many community events because of the COVID restriction that we've had. Because we're a housing organization, we've been very cautious about bringing people together. So last week it was 8, but this week, because the COVID restriction has changed a bit, we're back to being able to host some, it kind of depends on what the event looks like. Let me be honest about that.
Yeah.
There are opportunities and we have different spaces available throughout our properties. So like the space at 106 South Division, I'm going to just show you the room.
Oh,
So we're at the corner of South Division and Oaks. We got a bunch of big old windows. You can kind of come in and check it out if you want to come by. This is like the gallery space. The walls behind me are the mobile gallery walls. We have a big stack of those. We can kind of roll them out and put them up and have the gallery space, or we can convert it. Right now it's set up at classroom style because we have a workshop going on Thursday with residents who are going to be doing some stuff with computers. But Brandon is going to be doing his project in another one of our buildings, and the capacity there I think is going to be about 100 people. We have seating in this space. It kind of comfortably seats if you're doing it like an event style. We can kind of comfortably seat probably like 50 people. So it kind of depends on what your vibe is.
absolutely. No, that's great. Thank you.
And we'll just say all that's COVID pending, right? So if there's some kind of thing, there's not going to be a thing, right? But if there's a thing, then we have to come up with a new solution and get creative. Move outside. So with Brandon's event, right? Brandon, we were originally thinking like, oh, we're going to be in the parking lot. We're going to be in a parking lot with a couple tents. We're going to be a parking lot with a couple tents, a couple chairs. We've got a mobile stage. So there's possibilities. And at the point we were talking about doing it in the parking lot, we were like, we were willing to help work through the paperwork that it takes to get the city to approve a public event. I will say there are a couple of restrictions. Let me just put this out there for everybody. A couple of restrictions. One, because of where the funds come from, there are a few things, and because of the walls that we have, there are a few things that have to be observed. So there are some restrictions on content. The restrictions tend to be something that we can work through and talk about, but I will say the easy ones, the low-hanging fruit: no profanity, no overt religious content, no overt sexual content, right? So those are some of the kind of basic ones because of the DGRI funding that's involved. And then also the city of Grand Rapids is restrictive on things that might operate like a promotion for an existing business. And there are some other limitations that we would talk through. If you're doing like an event, then there are some other things that we need to talk about in terms of content for your event as well. That might be somewhat restricted. I'm happy to kind of talk through that on a case-by-case basis with people. Usually I feel like thinking, would I invite my grandmother and my 9-year-old, favorite kid to this event? Then you're probably, and the answer is yes, then you're probably all right. Because a lot of the stuff is happening in people's homes, in the place that they live. And so they don't have a say in those spaces often. And we really want to honor the point that we're trying to create a space of comfort and connection for people, not a space of emotional strife. Not to say we can't be challenging, but I think how we do it needs a little finesse sometimes. I see that Brandon's event has definitely some interesting, challenging perspectives and conversations associated with it, but yeah.
Yeah. It's a PG-13 show.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
PG-13 warning label on the art, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, I don't know. Other questions, y'all? All right. Well, with that, then I'm gonna cut us off and move on with our evenings. If you have any other questions, feel free to email myself or Maddie. And we look forward to y'all's applications. The call for artists, if you know other people, if you think, oh, this opportunity isn't for me, but it would be great for, please feel free to forward, if you got an email invitation for tonight, forward that on to other friends and community members that you think would be interested. We would love to have people be aware of the projects. And if you have other follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer them. So either Maddie or I will get back to you in short order. Sound good?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
All
so
right,
much. You
y'all.
guys have a good night.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, y'all. Looking
Thank you.
forward to seeing what you
Thanks,
put
everyone.
together.
Thank
Talk to you
you.
soon.
Bye.